My son sold my late wife's purse to get money for a cruise. When I got a call from the estate sale shop, the man on the line sounded terrified. "Sir, there was a false bottom in that purse, and what we found inside—" I froze. I'm Garrett Reynolds, 58 years old, and I thought I knew what heartbreak felt like when I lost my wife Patricia 6 months ago. I was wrong. Real heartbreak is standing in your own living room, staring at the empty spot on the dresser where her burgundy leather purse used to sit, and hearing your own son tell you he sold it for cruise money. "Dad, it was just sitting there collecting dust," Austin said, not even bothering to look up from his phone. He was sprawled on my couch like he owned the place, still wearing the same wrinkled polo shirt from yesterday. At 32, my son had perfected the art of disappointing me, but this felt different. This felt like betrayal. The Arizona heat was making everything worse. Even with the AC running, the house felt suffocating. I'd been an electrician for 35 years before retiring last year, worked construction sites in 115-degree summers, but nothing prepared me for this kind of heat, the burning in my chest when I looked at my son. "Austin," my voice came out rougher than I intended. "That was your mother's purse, the one she carried every day for 12 years. He finally looked up, and I saw something in his eyes that made my chest tighten. Not guilt, not remorse, irritation. "Look, I needed the money, okay? The Mediterranean cruise leaves next week, and Ashley expects me to pay for both of us. You know how women are." He shrugged like he was discussing the weather. "Besides, what were you going to do with it? Stare at it forever?" The words hit me like a live wire. I gripped the back of my recliner, the same chair where Patricia used to sit and organize the contents of that purse every evening after dinner. She'd pull out receipts, count her cash, check her lipstick. Such a simple ritual, but it was hers. It was proof she had existed, proof of all those ordinary moments that make up a life together. "I can't believe you did this," I whispered. Austin stood up, and for a moment I thought maybe he'd finally show some remorse. Instead, he crossed his arms and looked at me like I was the one being unreasonable. The military training from my Army Reserve days kicked in. Stay calm, assess the situation, maintain control. "Dad, come on. You're being dramatic. It's a purse. Mom's gone. She doesn't need it anymore." His voice was flat, matter of fact. "I got $650 for it at Miller's estate sales on Camelback Road. That's probably more than you paid for it originally." $650. He had reduced Patricia's memory to $650, and a cruise with some woman I'd met exactly twice. A woman who worked at some marketing company and talked about brand synergy at family dinners. "Austin, that purse was all I had left of her that still smelled like her perfume. It was—" I stopped, my throat closing up. How could I explain to my own son what it felt like to lose the woman you'd loved for 30 years? How could I make him understand that sometimes objects become sacred when they're all you have left? "Oh God, Dad, please don't start crying again." Austin rolled his eyes. "Look, if it makes you feel better, maybe I can buy you something nice from the cruise. They have good jewelry in the Mediterranean." I stared at him, really stared at him, and felt something break inside me that I didn't think could break anymore. This was my son, the boy I'd taught to wire a light switch, to throw a spiral. The teenager I'd stayed up waiting for when he missed curfew. The young man I'd helped through college, thinking I was raising someone with character. The house suddenly felt like a construction site after an electrical fire. Everything familiar but damaged beyond repair. "Get out," I said quietly. "What?" "Get out of my house." My voice was steady now, cold. The same tone I'd used with lazy apprentices who didn't respect the trade. "Take your things and get out." Austin's face shifted from irritation to surprise. "Dad, you're overreacting. It's just a stupid purse." It wasn't stupid to me. The words exploded out of me. Nothing about your mother was stupid. And the fact that you can't understand that, the fact that you think it's okay to take the one thing I treasured most and sell it for vacation money, tells me everything I need to know about who you really are. For a second, just a second, I thought I saw something flicker across his face, but then he grabbed his jacket from the chair and headed for the door. "Fine. I'm going to Ashley's anyway. Maybe when you calm down, you'll realize I was trying to help. That purse was just making you more depressed." He paused at the door. "And for the record, Dad, Mom would want me to be happy. She'd understand why I needed the money." The door slammed shut, and I was alone with the silence and the empty space where Patricia's purse used to be. The central air kicked on, but the house still felt like an oven. Outside, a neighbor was running his leaf blower, the sound echoing off the stucco walls of our Desert Ridge subdivision. I walked over to the dresser and ran my fingers over the spot where the purse had sat. There was a faint outline in the dust, a perfect rectangle that proved it had been there, that I hadn't imagined it. Patricia always kept it right there, next to her jewelry box and the framed photo of our wedding day. I picked up the wedding photo, studying her young face. She'd been 24 then, so full of hope and dreams. What would she think of Austin now? What would she think of me for raising a son who could be so callous, so cruel? The house felt enormous and empty around me. Every room held memories of Patricia, but now even those felt tainted by Austin's words, just sitting there collecting dust, as if love was something that expired, as if grief had a deadline. I made myself a cup of coffee and sat in my recliner, staring at the empty spot on the dresser. The afternoon sun was slanting through the blinds, creating patterns on the hardwood floor that Patricia had insisted on when we renovated 5 years ago. She'd wanted the house to feel warm, lived in. Now it just felt hollow. Tomorrow I would go to Miller's estate sales. I'd offer $800, $900, whatever it took to get Patricia's purse back. I still had some savings, money we'd put aside for retirement trips we'd never get to take. Money that was supposed to fund our golden years exploring national parks and visiting grandchildren we'd never have. But tonight, I just sat in the growing darkness of another Phoenix evening, wondering how the son I'd raised could look at his grieving father and see nothing but an obstacle to his happiness. Wondering if Patricia would be as disappointed in Austin as I was. Wondering if I'd failed them both. The worst part wasn't even losing the purse. The worst part was realizing that my son, the last family I had left, didn't understand what love looked like. And maybe, just maybe, he never would. Austin had always been different from me. Even as a kid, he'd preferred video games to working with his hands, books to building things. I tried to connect with him through sports, taught him to throw a football in the backyard, took him to Diamondbacks games. But he'd always seemed more interested in the stats than the game itself, more fascinated by the business side than the pure joy of competition. Patricia used to say he was just wired differently, that not every son had to follow in his father's footsteps. She'd defend his choices when I questioned why he needed such expensive clothes for college, why he couldn't work summers like I had. "He's finding his path, Garrett," she'd say. "Give him time." Time. We'd given him 32 years, and this was what we got. A son who saw his mother's memory as something to liquidate. I thought about calling my old army buddy Marcus, but it was getting late, and besides, what would I say? That my son had sold his dead mother's purse? That I'd thrown him out of the house? Marcus would probably tell me I should have done it years ago. He'd never understood why Patricia and I kept supporting Austin through his various career transitions. The failed marketing internship, the 6 months as a freelance consultant that never brought in any actual consulting fees. The phone rang around 9 p.m. Austin's name appeared on the screen, and for a moment, my heart jumped. Maybe he'd realized what he'd done. Maybe he was calling to apologize, to tell me he'd driven straight back to Miller's and bought the purse back himself. I let it go to voicemail. An hour later, he called again, then again at 10:30. Each time I watched his name appear and disappear, and each time I felt a little piece of whatever hope I had left crumble away. Finally, around 11, I played the messages. "Dad, come on, pick up. Look, I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings, but you're totally overreacting about this purse thing. Call me back." The second message was more irritated. "Dad, this is ridiculous. I'm leaving for the cruise in 3 days. We need to talk before I go. Don't be such a drama queen." The third message made my jaw clench. "Fine, be that way. Ashley thinks you're having some kind of breakdown anyway. Maybe this time apart will be good for both of us. I'll call you when I get back, and hopefully you'll have gotten some perspective." Drama queen, breakdown, perspective. I deleted all 3 messages and turned off the phone. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Austin's face when he shrugged and called his mother's purse just sitting there collecting dust. I kept thinking about all the times I'd bailed him out, all the second chances, all the excuses Patricia and I had made for him. When he was 16 and wrecked his first car, we'd bought him another one because boys make mistakes. When he couldn't hold down his job at the movie theater because he didn't click with management, we'd paid for his gas and insurance anyway. When he dropped out of college the first time to find himself, we'd welcomed him back home and footed the bill when he decided to re-enroll. Every time, Patricia had said we were investing in his future. Every time, I'd wondered if we were just enabling him to avoid growing up. By 6 o'clock in the morning, I was dressed and waiting for Miller's estate sales to open. $900 cash in my pocket and a determination in my chest that felt harder than the rebar I used to install in commercial foundations. This wasn't just about getting a purse back anymore. This was about reclaiming something Austin had taken from me without permission. Not just Patricia's memory, but my right to grieve in my own way, on my own timeline. The sun was already climbing over the mountains to the east, promising another scorching Arizona day. I sat in my truck outside the strip mall, air conditioning running, and watched the morning shift workers opening their stores. Regular people starting another regular day, probably dealing with regular problems. I envied them. The estate sale shop sat in a strip mall on Camelback Road, squeezed between a dry cleaner and a cell phone repair place. I'd driven past it 1,000 times on my way to the electrical supply house, but never imagined I'd be walking through that door, especially not to buy back my dead wife's belongings from my own son. A bell chimed as I pushed open the glass door. The smell hit me immediately, a mixture of old leather, dust, and something floral I couldn't identify. The place was bigger than it looked from outside, with glass cases lining the walls filled with jewelry, watches, and decorative items that other desperate people had traded for quick cash. "Help you with something?" The voice came from behind the counter. The man was maybe 45 with graying hair and tired eyes that had probably seen every kind of human desperation imaginable. His name tag read, "Tom Miller. My son sold you a burgundy leather purse yesterday," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'd like to buy it back." His expression changed immediately. He glanced toward the back room, then back at me, and I caught something in his eyes that made my stomach clench. Nervousness, maybe even fear. "You said a burgundy purse yesterday?" He was stalling, his fingers drumming against the counter like he was working up the nerve to tell me something I didn't want to hear. "What's your son's name?" "Austin Reynolds. He said he got $650 for it." Tom Miller swallowed hard and looked at me like I was the bearer of terrible news. "Mr. Reynolds, Look, we need to talk. Can you step back here for a minute?" He led me behind the counter into a small office that smelled like stale coffee and air freshener. The purse sat on his desk, and seeing it again made my chest tight with relief and grief all at once. It looked exactly the same, the rich burgundy leather Patricia had loved, the gold clasp she'd polished every few weeks, the worn spot on the handle where her fingers had rested for all those years. "There she is," I said quietly, reaching toward it. "Wait!" Tom's voice was sharp. "Mr. Reynolds, I have to tell you something. When your son brought this in, I thought it was just a regular vintage purse. Nice leather, good craftsmanship, worth maybe $400, $450 tops. I gave him $650 because he seemed desperate, and honestly, I felt bad for the guy. Young man like that selling his dead mother's purse." I frowned. "Okay, so what's the problem? I'll pay you $800 for it right now." Tom ran his hand through his hair and looked at me with something that might have been pity. After he left, my assistant was cleaning it out. Checking for anything left inside. Sometimes people forget things in pockets, or there's old gum stuck to the lining. We always check before we put items out for sale. My heart started beating faster. In all my years doing electrical work, I'd learned to recognize that feeling, the moment when a routine job suddenly becomes complicated. And, yeah, she found something. A hidden compartment in the bottom, real clever work, professional level stuff. You wouldn't know it was there unless you were looking for it. He picked up the purse and turned it over, showing me the bottom. His hands were shaking slightly. "See this seam here? It's actually a false bottom. Whoever made this purse, they built it special." I stared at the purse, my mind racing. In 30 years of marriage, I'd never known about any hidden compartment. Patricia had carried this purse everywhere, to the grocery store, to my company Christmas parties, to Austin's school events. I'd seen her rummage through it 1,000 times looking for her keys or lipstick. How had I never noticed? What was inside? Tom opened a desk drawer and pulled out a manila envelope. His hands were definitely shaking now as he handed it to me. Letters, a whole stack of them. And Mr. Reynolds, I think you need to sit down. The room suddenly felt too small, too hot. Even with the air conditioning running, sweat was beading on my forehead. I sank into the chair across from his desk, the envelope heavy in my hands. Letters from who? They're love letters to your wife. Tom's voice was barely above a whisper. From someone named Leonard Hoffman. And sir, they're dated during your marriage. Recent ones too. The newest one is from just 8 months ago. The envelope slipped from my fingers and hit the floor. Letters scattered across the worn carpet, white envelopes with Patricia's name written in handwriting I didn't recognize. My vision blurred at the edges, and for a moment I thought I might pass out. That's impossible, I heard myself say. Patricia wouldn't. We were happy. We were married for 30 years. Tom knelt down and carefully gathered the letters, not meeting my eyes. I'm sorry, Mr. Reynolds, I really am. I've been in this business for 15 years, and this is the worst thing I've ever had to tell someone. I watched him stack the letters neatly, my brain refusing to process what he was saying. Patricia had been sick for the last 3 years of her life. Cancer. I'd driven her to every appointment, held her hand through every treatment, slept in hospital chairs when she was too weak to come home. When had she had time for letters? When had she had the energy for whatever this was? How many letters? My voice sounded like it was coming from someone else. 12. Some are pretty old, maybe 10 years or so. Others are recent. Tom set the stack on his desk. Mr. Reynolds, I don't know if you want to read these. Sometimes ignorance is, I need to see them. He hesitated, then handed me the top letter. It was postmarked 8 months before Patricia died, addressed to her in careful cursive. My hands were trembling as I opened it, but I forced myself to read every word. My dearest Patricia, it began. I know these letters are risky, but I can't stop writing to you. Seeing you at the grocery store yesterday and pretending we were just neighbors nearly killed me. When you smiled at me, I wanted to tell everyone in that store that you're the love of my life, that you have been for 12 years. I know you can't leave Garrett, especially now that he's taking such good care of you, but please know that every day without you is agony. I love you more than life itself. Always yours, Leonard. The letter fell from my hands. I stared at Tom, who was watching me with the expression of someone witnessing a car accident in slow motion. 12 years, I whispered. She was having an affair for 12 years. Mr. Reynolds, Tom said gently. Leonard Hoffman. Do you know that name? The name felt foreign in my mouth, but familiar too, like something I'd heard in passing but never paid attention to. I think I know that name. He lived over on Desert Ridge Boulevard. His wife died 6 years ago. Patricia went to the funeral. She cried at the funeral. The room was spinning. Everything I thought I knew about my life, about my marriage, about the woman I'd loved and grieved for, was crumbling around me. Patricia had been living a double life. For 12 years, she'd been in love with another man while I cooked her dinner, held her when she was scared, and believed we were soulmates. I thought about all those evenings when she'd organize her purse, all those little rituals I'd found endearing. Had she been reading his letters then, planning their next meeting, living a completely different emotional life right in front of me? Tom cleared his throat. There's something else, Mr. Reynolds. Some of the letters, they mention your son. I looked up at him, and the expression on his face told me that whatever was coming next would be even worse than what I'd already learned. What about Austin? Tom picked up another letter, this one yellowed with age. This one's from 12 years ago, right around the time frame when your son would have been conceived. He paused. Mr. Reynolds, I think you need to read this one too. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the paper, but I read it. I read every word that would destroy what was left of my world. The letter from 12 years ago was written in the same careful handwriting, but the words were different. Desperate, pleading. My beloved Patricia, it read, I can't stop thinking about what happened between us last month. I know you're scared and I know this complicates everything, but I need you to know that I'm here for you no matter what you decide. If the baby is mine, I will find a way to be part of his life. I don't care what it costs me. I love you, And I will love this child because he's part of you. But Patricia, please, you have to tell me the truth. Is Austin my son?" The paper slipped from my hands and drifted to the floor. I sat there staring at it, my mind completely blank. Austin, my son, the boy I'd raised, the man I'd just thrown out of my house for selling his mother's purse. The son who might not be my son at all. "Mr. Reynolds!" Tom's voice seemed to come from far away. "Are you okay? Should I call someone?" I couldn't answer, couldn't breathe. 32 years. 32 years of believing Austin was my blood, my legacy, my family. 32 years of midnight feedings and first steps and baseball games and parent-teacher conferences. 32 years of teaching him to wire outlets and throw spirals and be a man. 32 years of loving a child who might belong to another man. Suddenly, everything made sense. Austin's lack of interest in working with his hands, his preference for books over building things, his casual disrespect for the values I'd tried to teach him. Maybe it wasn't that I'd failed as a father. Maybe it was that I'd never been his father at all. "There's more," Tom said quietly. "I'm sorry, but there's more." He handed me another letter, this one from just 2 years ago. The handwriting was different, shakier, weaker, cancer handwriting. This one was different. This one began, Leonard, and I realized, with a sick feeling, that this wasn't a letter to Patricia. This was a letter from Patricia, a copy she'd kept hidden in her purse. "Leonard," it began, "I can't keep doing this to Garrett. He's been so good to me through all the cancer treatments, and the guilt is eating me alive. I know we agreed never to tell him about Austin, but watching him love that boy so completely when he might not even be his father, it's breaking my heart. Sometimes I think I should just confess everything, but then I look at Garrett's face when he talks about Austin, and I can't destroy that. He loves being a father. He loves believing Austin is his legacy. How can I take that away from him?" The letter continued. "I've decided to end this between us. I mean it. After 12 years, I need to try to be the wife Garrett deserves for whatever time I have left. I know this will hurt you, but please understand. I can't keep betraying the man who's taking care of me while I'm dying." I set the letter down with trembling fingers. Patricia had tried to end it. In her final years, she'd tried to choose me, but the damage was already done. The betrayal was already complete. And the question that was tearing me apart, whether Austin was really my son, she'd taken that secret to her grave. "Mr. Reynolds," Tom said gently, "I think maybe you should go home, process this, maybe talk to someone." I looked up at him, this stranger who now knew more about my life than I did. My throat felt like I'd been breathing drywall dust for hours. "How long has Leonard Hoffman been dead?" Tom frowned. "Dead? I don't know anything about him being dead." My blood went cold. The air conditioning in the small office suddenly felt inadequate. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I don't know if he's dead. Why would you think he's dead?" I stared at him, my mind racing. His wife died 6 years ago. Patricia went to the funeral. She said Leonard was so heartbroken he moved away to live with his sister in Florida. Tom's expression grew troubled. "Mr. Reynolds, I hate to tell you this, but Leonard Hoffman still lives in town. I see him at the grocery store sometimes. Same fries where I shop on Tatum. Never moved anywhere that I know of." The room tilted. Everything I thought I knew was a lie. Leonard wasn't dead. Leonard wasn't in Florida. Leonard was still here, in the same city where I'd been grieving my wife for 6 months, believing I was her widowed husband. For 6 months I'd been carrying flowers to her grave while another man who'd loved her, maybe the man she'd really loved, was living just a few miles away. Where? My voice was barely a whisper. "Mr. Reynolds, I don't think—" "Where does he live?" Tom sighed. "Same place he always has. That house with the red tile roof on Desert Ridge Boulevard near the golf course. You know, the one with the perfect landscaping?" I knew that house. I'd driven past it hundreds of times on my way to job sites. It was a nice place, well-maintained, the kind of house that spoke of financial comfort. The kind of house an electrician couldn't afford even after 35 years in the trade. I'd never paid much attention to it, never wondered who lived there, never imagined it housed the man who'd been sleeping with my wife for 12 years. Suddenly, I remembered something. About 3 years ago, when Patricia was going through her first round of chemo, she'd asked me to drive her to run a quick errand near the golf course. She'd had me wait in the car while she walked up to a house with red tile roof and perfect landscaping. She'd been gone for almost an hour, and when she came back, she looked like she'd been crying. I'd asked if everything was okay, and she'd said she'd been visiting an old friend who was having a hard time. An old friend. Jesus Christ. I need to see him, I said, standing up on unsteady legs. Mr. Reynolds, maybe you should think about this. Maybe talk to a counselor or... I need those letters. I reached for the stack on his desk. Tom hesitated. Are you sure? Once you take these, once you read them all, you can't unknow what's in them. I looked at him, this kind stranger who was trying to protect me from my own life. But I was past protection now. I was past ignorance being bliss. I need to know all of it. He handed me the manila envelope. The purse is yours. No charge. I'm sorry this happened to you, Mr. Reynolds. I'm sorry your son put you in this position. I took the purse and the letters, feeling their weight like lead in my hands. As I walked toward the door, Tom called after me. Mr. Reynolds, whatever you decide to do, be careful. Sometimes the truth destroys more than the lies ever did. I drove home in a daze, the envelope sitting on the passenger seat like a bomb waiting to explode. At every red light, I stared at it, knowing that inside were 12 letters that would rewrite the story of my entire adult life. The Phoenix traffic moved around me like a river around a stone, everyone else going somewhere, having purpose, while I sat suspended between the life I thought I'd lived and whatever reality was waiting for me in those letters. At home, I sat at my kitchen table and spread the letters out in chronological order. The oldest was from 12 years ago, just months before Austin was born. The newest was from 8 months before Patricia died. Over a decade of secret correspondence between my wife and another man. I read them all, every single word. They started innocent enough, Leonard expressing sympathy for Patricia during a difficult time, offering friendship when I was working long hours managing electrical projects for the big casino expansion downtown. But they quickly became more intimate. By the third letter, Leonard was telling Patricia he was falling in love with her. By the fifth, she was telling him she felt the same. The letter from 10 years ago made me physically ill. Leonard describing their first night together, how natural it felt, how they both knew they were meant to be together. Patricia responding that she'd never felt more alive, more loved, more herself than when she was with him. And then, scattered throughout the years, references to Austin. Leonard asking about our boy. Patricia describing Austin's first words, his first day of school, his little league games that I'd coached. Leonard expressing frustration that he couldn't be there for these milestones, couldn't claim his son publicly. By the time I finished reading, it was dark outside. I sat in my empty kitchen, surrounded by the evidence of my wife's double life, and tried to figure out who I was. If I wasn't Austin's father, if I wasn't Patricia's beloved husband, if everything I'd believed about my family was a lie. The worst letter was from 5 years ago. Patricia describing how she felt torn between two worlds, the comfortable life she'd built with me and the passionate love she shared with Leonard. She wrote about watching me install new outlets in Austin's bedroom, how I'd taken such care to make sure everything was perfect and safe. Garrett is such a good man, she'd written. He deserves so much better than what I'm giving him. But I can't seem to stop loving Leonard, and I can't seem to stop lying. I thought about that weekend. I remembered being proud of the work I'd done, how I'd upgraded all the electrical in Austin's room so he could have his computer and stereo without tripping breakers. I thought Patricia seemed distracted, but I'd chalked it up to work stress. Now I knew she'd been writing love letters to another man while I was literally keeping our son's lights on. The phone rang, startling me out of my thoughts. Austin's name appeared on the screen. For a moment, I stared at it, wondering if I was looking at my son's name or at the name of a stranger. For the first time in 32 years, that question felt real and terrifying. I answered on the fourth ring. Dad, finally. I was starting to worry about you. His voice sounded normal, casual, like he hadn't destroyed what was left of our family yesterday, like he hadn't sold his mother's secrets for cruise money. Austin, look, I've been thinking about what happened yesterday, and I want to apologize. I shouldn't have sold Mom's purse without asking you first. It wasn't right. I almost laughed. Not right. If he only knew how far beyond not right this had all gone. Where are you? I'm at Ashley's place. We're finishing up the packing for tomorrow. He paused. Dad, I know you're upset, but I really think this trip will be good for me. Give me some perspective, you know? When I get back, maybe we can start fresh. Start fresh? With what? With lies? With a relationship built on a foundation that might not even exist? Austin, I need to ask you something, and I need you to tell me the truth. Okay, shoot. Do you know Leonard Hoffman? The silence on the other end of the line was so long I thought the call had dropped. Finally, Austin spoke. His voice changed completely. Why are you asking me about Leonard? Not, who's Leonard? Not, I don't know anyone by that name. Just why are you asking? Which told me everything I needed to know. So you do know him. Another long pause. Dad, how do you know about Leonard? I found the letters, Austin. All of them. Hidden in your mother's purse in a secret compartment. I heard Austin suck in a breath. Oh shit. How long have you known? Dad, this isn't... We shouldn't talk about this over the phone. How long, Austin? Since I was 21. His voice was barely above a whisper. Mom told me when I was having trouble in college, when we were fighting all the time about money and my grades. Austin had known for 11 years that Leonard Hoffman might be his father, and he'd never said a word. For 11 years he'd been living with this knowledge while I'd gone on believing we were a normal family, and you never thought to tell me. What was I supposed to say, that Mom had an affair? That I might not be your son? I didn't want to hurt you, but you were fine taking money from him. Another silence. Then, how did you know about the money? So it was true. Leonard had been supporting Austin financially. All those times Austin had seemed to have money when he shouldn't have. All those expensive clothes and gadgets on his non-existent income. It had all been coming from the man who thought he was Austin's real father. Just answer me. How long has he been giving you money? Dad, it's not what you think. How long? Since I was 22. He approached me after Mom told me about everything. He said he wanted to help with college, with getting started in life. 11 years. For 11 years, Austin had been taking money from another man while letting me believe I was his only father. For 11 years, he'd been playing us both. So yesterday, when you sold your mother's purse, you didn't need the money. No, Austin admitted quietly. I didn't need it. Then why? I don't know. I was angry about something Ashley said, and I wanted to hurt someone, I guess. And you were there. I wanted to hurt someone. My son, if he was my son, had sold his mother's memory because he wanted to hurt someone. And I was the convenient target. Dad, are you still there? I was there, but I wasn't the same person who'd answered the phone. That man had believed in family loyalty and unconditional love. That man had thought he knew who he was and where he belonged in the world. I'm here. Dad, I'm sorry. I'm really, really sorry. About the purse, about the money, about not telling you about Leonard. I know I messed up. Austin, I need you to answer one more question, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Okay. Do you think Leonard Hoffman is your father? The pause stretched so long I could hear Austin breathing on the other end of the line. When he finally spoke, his voice was different, older somehow, weighted with years of uncertainty. I don't know, Dad. I honestly don't know. But you've wondered. Of course I've wondered. How could I not? Every time I looked in the mirror, every time someone said I didn't look like you, every time we disagreed about something and you'd get that frustrated look. Austin's voice cracked. I've been wondering for 11 years. I thought about all those moments. The times I'd looked at Austin and felt like I was looking at a stranger. The times his values seemed so foreign to mine. The times I'd wondered where I'd gone wrong as a father. Maybe I hadn't gone wrong. Maybe I'd never been his father at all. Leonard thinks you're his son. I know. And your mother never told you the truth? She said she wasn't sure. She said the timing was complicated. She begged me never to tell you about any of it because it would destroy you. Austin was crying now. Dad, I never wanted to hurt you. I've been so confused for so long. Leonard made everything seem easier, like I didn't have to choose between you two. But I realize now that by taking his money, by keeping secrets, I was choosing him. I closed my eyes and tried to process what Austin was telling me. For 11 years, my son had been living in limbo, not knowing who his real father was, taking money from one while letting the other believe in a lie. No wonder he'd seemed so lost, so entitled, so angry at the world. "Austin, where does Leonard live? Dad, what are you planning to do?" "I'm planning to get some answers. Please don't do anything crazy. Leonard's not a bad guy. He's lonely, and he loved Mom, and he wants to believe I'm his son so badly that he's convinced himself it's true." "So you don't think he's your father?" Austin was quiet for a moment. I look at him sometimes and I see similarities. The way we both tilt our heads when we're thinking. The way we both hate confrontation. But then I look at you and I see other things. The way you taught me to be stubborn when something matters. The way you never give up on people even when they disappoint you. I felt something twist in my chest. Even now, even after everything, Austin was trying to protect both of us. "The house on Desert Ridge Boulevard," I said, "near the golf course. Dad, please." "I'm not going to hurt him, Austin. I just need to hear his side of this. What about me? What about us?" I looked around my empty kitchen, at the letters scattered across the table, at Patricia's purse sitting next to them like evidence in a crime scene. I don't know yet. I need to understand what happened before I can figure out what happens next. After I hung up, I sat in the silence and tried to make sense of everything I'd learned. Patricia had been living a double life for 12 years. Austin had been caught between two fathers for 11 years, and I'd been living in complete ignorance until yesterday. The worst part wasn't even the betrayal. The worst part was realizing how many signs I'd missed, how many times I'd explained away things that should have made me suspicious. Patricia's late-night phone calls that she said were work-related. Her sudden interest in going to the grocery store alone. The way she'd sometimes seem distant after social events, like she'd seen someone she wasn't supposed to see. I'd attributed it all to stress, to her job, to the normal ups and downs of a long marriage. I'd been so confident in our relationship that I'd never even considered the possibility that she might be unfaithful. Around 10 p.m., I drove to Desert Ridge Boulevard. I didn't have a plan, exactly. I just needed to see Leonard Hoffman's house to make this whole nightmare feel real. For 6 months, I'd been mourning Patricia as my devoted wife. Now I needed to accept that she'd been someone else's devoted lover. The house was exactly as Tom Miller had described it. Red tile roof, perfect landscaping, the kind of place that spoke of financial success. There was a light on in what looked like a home office, and I could see the silhouette of a man sitting at a desk. Leonard Hoffman, the man who'd been sleeping with my wife for 12 years. The man who might be Austin's real father. The man who'd been paying my son's bills while I'd been taking credit for raising him. I sat in my truck across the street for almost an hour, watching that lit window. Part of me wanted to march up to his front door and demand answers. Part of me wanted to drive home and pretend I'd never found those letters. But the part of me that had learned discipline in the Army Reserve, the part that had spent 35 years solving electrical problems by methodically checking every connection, that part knew I needed more information before I acted. Finally, I drove home and called my old Army buddy, Marcus. If anyone would know how to handle this situation, it would be Marcus. He'd been through his own divorce 10 years ago and had come out the other side stronger. "Garrett, it's late. Everything okay?" "Marcus, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." "Sure, what's going on?" "Did you ever suspect anything about Patricia? About her being unfaithful?" There was a long pause. "Garrett, why are you asking me this? Just answer me, please." Marcus sighed heavily. "There were rumors, man. Years ago, some of the guys mentioned seeing her with someone at the golf course restaurant. But you seemed happy, and I figured it was just small-town gossip." "You never told me," I said, my voice flat. What was I supposed to say? "Hey, Garrett, some of the guys think your wife might be cheating on you based on seeing her have lunch with another man." I didn't have proof of anything, and you two seemed solid. I closed my eyes. Even my friends had known. Everyone had known, except me. "Marcus, I need to ask you about Austin. About when he was born. Do you remember anything unusual about that time? Unusual how? The timing? The way Patricia acted? Anything?" Marcus was quiet for so long I thought he'd hung up. Finally he spoke, his voice careful and sad. "Garrett, Austin was born exactly 9 months after your anniversary that year. I remember because Sarah and I had just gotten back from your anniversary party, and then a few weeks later Patricia went into labor." My heart stopped. "Wait, what anniversary party?" "The one at your house. You don't remember? It was your 5th anniversary. Patricia insisted on having this big barbecue, invited half the neighborhood. You were so proud showing off that new deck you'd built. I remembered now. Patricia had insisted on that party, said she wanted to celebrate our marriage with all our friends. It had been a great night. Good food, good friends, Patricia in that blue dress that made her eyes sparkle. We'd renewed our vows in the backyard, just for fun, with everyone cheering. Marcus, are you sure about the timing? Positive. Sarah's pregnant too right now, so I've been paying attention to these things. Austin was born exactly 9 months later, full-term baby, 8 pounds 2 ounces, which meant Austin had been conceived on or around our anniversary. Our 5th anniversary, when Patricia and I had renewed our vows in front of all our friends, when we'd made love that night with more passion than we'd had in months, when I'd felt like the luckiest man alive. Garrett, what's this about? Is everything okay? I found some letters today. Love letters between Patricia and another man. Oh, Jesus. Garrett, I'm sorry. Letters that suggest Austin might not be my son. The silence stretched between us. Marcus had known me since basic training, had been my best man at my wedding, had held Austin when he was just days old. If anyone understood what this meant, it was him. What are you going to do? I'm going to talk to Leonard Hoffman, the financial advisor, the guy who lives near the golf course. You know him? Know of him. His wife used to work with Sarah at the bank before she died. Nice enough guy from what I heard. Quiet. Kept to himself after his wife passed. I thought about that. Leonard's wife had died 6 years ago, but according to the letters, the affair had been going on for 12 years, which meant Leonard had been cheating on his dying wife with my healthy one. Marcus, I need a favor. Name it. If this goes badly tomorrow, if I do something stupid, I need you to look after things. My finances, the house, whatever. Garrett, you're scaring me. What are you planning? I'm just going to talk to him. But I need to know someone's watching out for me, in case... In case what? In case I find out my whole life has been a lie. The next morning, I woke up on my kitchen table. I'd fallen asleep reading the letters for the 3rd time, looking for clues I'd missed. My neck was stiff, my back ached, and I felt every one of my 58 years. I made coffee and tried to think clearly about what I needed to do. I could ignore all of this, pretend I'd never found the letters, go back to grieving Patricia as the faithful wife I'd thought she was. But Austin was leaving for his cruise tomorrow, and Leonard was living just a few miles away, probably wondering if I'd ever discover the truth. No, I'd spent 6 months living in ignorance. I wasn't going to spend the rest of my life that way. I showered, put on my best jeans and a clean button-down shirt, the kind of clothes I'd wear to a job interview or a parent-teacher conference. Then I drove to Desert Ridge Boulevard. The house looked different in daylight, bigger, more expensive. The landscaping was even more impressive than I'd realized. Professional grade work that probably cost more than I made in a month. A financial advisor's house. The kind of house that could afford to send someone else's son on Mediterranean cruises. I parked in the driveway this time. No more hiding across the street, no more surveillance. I was here for answers, and I was going to get them. Leonard Hoffman answered the door on the second knock. He was exactly as I'd imagined from Austin's descriptions. Tall, lean, with silver hair and those familiar brown eyes that looked so much like my son's. He was wearing khakis and a polo shirt, the uniform of successful retirees everywhere. Garrett Reynolds, he said quietly. It wasn't a question. Leonard Hoffman, I replied. He looked older than I'd expected, more fragile, with lines around his eyes that spoke of years of carrying secrets. For a moment, we just stood there, sizing each other up. 2 men who'd shared the same woman for 12 years without knowing it. I've been expecting this day for a long time, he said finally. Would you like to come inside? I think we need to talk. I followed him into a living room that was tastefully decorated with expensive furniture and artwork. The place had the feel of a showroom, everything perfectly arranged, nothing out of place. It was the kind of house Patricia had always admired when we'd drive through the nicer neighborhoods, the kind of life she'd sometimes hinted she wished we could afford. On the mantel above the fireplace, I saw what I'd been dreading, a framed photo of Austin at his college graduation, smiling next to Leonard. A photo that should have been mine. How long have you known? I asked, still standing near the doorway. Leonard gestured for me to sit down, then poured himself a scotch from a crystal decanter. His hands were shaking slightly. Known what, exactly? Don't play games with me. I found the letters. All of them. Leonard's face went pale. He set down his drink and sank into a leather chair across from me. Patricia promised me she'd destroyed those. She kept copies, hidden in her purse. The purse that Austin sold yesterday to pay for his cruise. Leonard closed his eyes. Austin doesn't know about the letters. He knows about Patricia and me, but he doesn't know about the letters. But he knows you might be his father. Yes, he's known since he was 21. Patricia told him during his junior year of college when he was struggling with money and grades. She thought it might help him to know he had options. The word hit me like a slap. Options. As if I was just one choice among many, a backup plan in case the real father didn't work out. Options. Like what? Financial support, guidance, career connections. Leonard looked uncomfortable. Garrett, Austin came to me because he felt like you two didn't understand each other. You're a good man, a hard worker, but Austin wanted things you couldn't provide. Like what? College tuition without student loans, internships at investment firms, travel opportunities, the kind of life he saw his college friends living. Leonard's voice was quiet, ashamed. I've been supporting him financially for 11 years. I know it was wrong, but I thought if I couldn't claim him publicly, at least I could help him succeed. The pieces were falling into place. Austin's expensive apartment that I'd never understood how he could afford on his sporadic income, his casual attitude toward money, his sense of entitlement, his disrespect for the values I'd tried to teach him about earning what you have. So yesterday, when he sold his mother's purse, he didn't need the money. Leonard shook his head. I give him $800 a month. He has a trust fund I set up that he'll inherit when I die. The cruise was already paid for. $800 a month. For 11 years. That was over $100,000. More money than I'd made in 2 years when I was starting out as an electrician. Money that had bought Leonard what he wanted most, a relationship with the boy he believed was his son. Then why did he sell it? I think... Leonard paused, choosing his words carefully. I think he was testing you, seeing how far he could push before you'd stand up to him. He's been doing the same thing to me for years, taking my money while keeping me at arm's length, never quite letting me feel like his real father. I stared at this man who had been pulling the strings of my family for over a decade. And the paternity question? Do you know for sure? Leonard was quiet for a long moment. He walked to a window that overlooked his perfectly manicured backyard, hands clasped behind his back. Patricia and I never did a test. She was terrified of what it might reveal. He turned back to me. But Garrett, I need you to know something. The timing. It was very close. You were working that big casino project downtown, putting in 80-hour weeks. Patricia was lonely, and I was going through my divorce. We were both vulnerable. I remembered that project. 6 months of 12-hour days, 7 days a week, trying to get the electrical finished before the grand opening. Patricia had complained about never seeing me, had said she felt like a single mother. I'd promised her things would get better after the job was done, that we'd take a vacation, spend more time together. Instead, I'd come home exhausted every night, barely able to have a conversation, let alone be the husband she needed. And she'd found comfort with Leonard. But there's something else, Leonard continued, something that's been eating at me for years. He walked to his desk and pulled out a calendar, yellowed with age. I've kept this since Patricia and I started seeing each other. I marked every day we were together, every time we... He stopped, looking embarrassed. I know it sounds obsessive, but I needed to keep track, for my own sanity. He handed me the calendar. It was from 12 years ago, and I could see small pencil marks scattered throughout the months. But there was a gap in the markings during the time frame when Austin would have been conceived. I was in Tucson for 3 weeks during that period, helping my mother move into assisted living. Patricia and I didn't see each other at all during those 3 weeks. And according to my calculations, that's exactly when Austin was conceived. I stared at the calendar, my mind racing. I'm saying Austin was conceived during your anniversary celebration. The weekend Patricia wrote to me about, telling me how guilty she felt, how much she loved you, how she wanted to make your marriage work. The room seemed to tilt. I gripped the arms of my chair, trying to process what Leonard was telling me. Austin was my son, My biological son. The math didn't lie. Then why did you keep supporting him? Why did you let him believe you might be his father? Leonard's shoulders sagged. Because I wanted him to be mine so badly that I convinced myself the timing might be wrong. Because Patricia felt so guilty about our affair that she let me believe what I needed to believe. Because losing her was devastating enough. I couldn't bear to lose him too. Even knowing he wasn't yours. Even knowing he probably wasn't mine. Leonard's voice broke. I've been living a fantasy for 11 years, Garrett, paying for the privilege of pretending I had a son, and I've been enabling Austin to disrespect the man who actually raised him. I stood up, suddenly needing to move, to pace, to do something with the energy coursing through me. Austin was my son. After everything, after all the doubt and fear and heartbreak, he was still mine. What happens now? Leonard asked. I looked at this broken man who had loved my wife and stolen my son's loyalty through deception and money. I should have felt anger, should have wanted revenge. Instead, I felt something closer to pity. Now you tell Austin the truth, I said. You tell him his mother's affair is over, that the man who raised him is his real father, and that if he wants a relationship with me, he's going to have to stop taking money from the man who isn't his father. Leonard nodded slowly. And if he doesn't want a relationship with you? I thought about that for a moment. Austin had shown me who he really was over the past 2 days. He was selfish, confused, caught between two worlds he'd never had to choose between. Maybe that was partly my fault as a parent, or maybe that was just who he'd chosen to become. Then I'll know I did my best, I said, and I'll move on with my life. Leonard walked to his desk and pulled out a business card. There's a lab downtown that can do paternity testing, discrete, fast results. If you want scientific proof, I don't need proof. The calendar is enough. The timing is enough. I looked around his perfect living room one more time. Leonard, stop giving him money. Stop letting him believe you're his father. Stop encouraging him to disrespect me. If you really care about Austin, help him become a better man instead of enabling him to be a worse one. Leonard nodded. I will. I promise. As I walked toward the door, Leonard called after me. Garrett? I turned back. For what it's worth, you raised a good kid. He's confused and he's made some bad choices, but he's not fundamentally bad. He's just been torn between two worlds for too long. I drove home feeling lighter than I had in days. Austin was my son. Whatever else was true, whatever else had been lies and secrets and betrayals, that fundamental fact remained unchanged. I was his father, and nothing could take that away from me. Austin called that evening while I was sitting on my back patio, watching the sunset over the Phoenix Mountains. Dad, Leonard told me what happened today. And I owe you an apology. A real one this time. Austin's voice was different, older, more serious. I've been lying to myself for 11 years, telling myself I was just keeping my options open, but really, I was playing both sides, taking from both of you while giving loyalty to neither. Austin. No, let me finish. I know you're my father. I've always known, deep down. The way you taught me to be stubborn when something matters. The way you never give up on people, even when they disappoint you. Even when they sell your dead wife's purse for cruise money. I felt something ease in my chest. So what happens now? Now I cancel my cruise. Now I give Leonard back his credit cards and tell him I can't take his money anymore. Now I get a real job and start supporting myself like the 32-year-old man I'm supposed to be. And us? Austin was quiet for a moment. Dad, can I ask you something? What? Will you teach me? I mean, really teach me this time. About work, about responsibility, about being the kind of man you are instead of the kind of man Leonard's money tried to make me. I looked out at the desert landscape, at the saguaro cacti standing like sentinels in the fading light. For the first time in days, I felt like I could breathe properly. Yes, I said, but it starts with you making a choice. Me or Leonard. You can't have both anymore. I choose you, Dad. I should have chosen you 11 years ago. 6 months later, I was sitting on my back patio watching Austin install new landscape lighting for Mrs. Garcia next door. He'd started his own handyman business using the skills I'd taught him as a kid, but had never bothered to develop. He wasn't getting rich, but he was earning an honest living for the first time in his adult life. The burgundy purse sat on the table beside me, no longer a shrine to grief, but a reminder of lessons learned. Patricia had made mistakes, terrible mistakes that had nearly destroyed our family, but in the end the truth had set us all free. Austin finished installing the lights and walked over to me, wiping sweat from his forehead with his work shirt. "Dad, Mrs. Garcia wants to know if you can look at her kitchen wiring tomorrow. I told her you were the best electrician in the neighborhood." I laughed. "I'm retired, remember? Same difference to her. Besides, you taught me that a real man helps his neighbors when they need it." I looked at my son, truly my son in every way that mattered, and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Pride. Not just in what he was accomplishing, but in who he was becoming. "Tell Mrs. Garcia I'll be there at 9, I said. Austin grinned and headed inside to clean up. I sat on my patio as the sun set over the Phoenix suburbs, holding Patricia's purse and thinking about the strange way truth has of destroying some things while healing others. Leonard Hoffman had moved to Florida 3 months ago, finally accepting that the family he'd tried to buy was never really his to begin with. Austin had visited him once before he left, not to say goodbye, but to thank him for one thing, teaching him what he didn't want to become. As for me, I'd learned that love isn't about perfection or even about blood. It's about choice. Austin had chosen to be my son, really and truly, for the first time in his adult life, and I had chosen to give him the chance to earn back what he'd thrown away. The purse would always carry Patricia's secrets, but it would also carry the memory of the day our family finally became real. Not perfect, not without scars, but real. And sometimes, real is the best kind of love there is. I raised my coffee cup to the setting sun and made a toast to second chances, to the truth that sets you free, and to the son who'd finally come home.